Thank you.
You're ready to go.
Good. All right. Oh, we lost Rob.
Pardon me?
You can actually did it.
Let's see where he went. You gotta do roll call.
You can continue forward. He'll be back.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, welcome everybody to the meeting here tonight, November 14th, 2023, Planning and Parks. First, we'll do roll call.
Chair Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni, Councilmember Clark. Here. Councilmember Dodwell. Councilmember Dodwell,
Oh, here. Sorry.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
and we have a quorum.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here tonight. We'll start out the meeting by doing the approval of the minutes from the council or from the committee's meeting of Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So
Councilmember
moved.
Marshall, second by Councilmember Rottenberg. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstained? Any opposed? Thank you. Approved. Next, we'll go to public input. Do we have anybody that is looking to speak?
We don't have anyone online. Mr. Jurgens will speak, but during one of the items.
Okay. All right, moving right along, that takes us to action items, and we'll start off with planning matters, and we have 4 items ready for consideration here. And we'll start out with the reoccupancy permit programs development for rental properties, and Ms. Ribito, please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This is a subject that we are all very familiar with. Just a brief summary. This is a follow-up discussion from the September meeting pertaining to implementing an occupancy inspection program. Essentially, the Planning and Zoning Commission, although not supportive of a full occupancy program for all homes, did recognize the need for reoccupancy with rental properties. And so this is what we were pursuing. The city council supported that and referred it to this committee in order to kind of work out the details and such. At the September meeting, the committee concluded that perhaps the steps that were presented were not in the right order and that preparation of legislation should be completed after the parameters of the program are better defined. So at the direction from the previous discussion, the department revised the order of steps, and the first step will be to develop additional set of parameters which have been provided in your packet this evening. And we'll go over. And then the second would be to request an official from St. Louis County to attend the committee meeting. Mr. Kurt Jurgens is with us this evening, and he will be available to answer any questions and kind of go over the program itself as well. Following that would be hold up to 3 community meetings to explain the reoccupancy permit program and seek input from those that would be most impacted by it. And then the following step would be to review that and kind of determine where we should go from there. And then after that, it would be to complete the legislation, some of which is included in your packet. It's actually a pretty simple process as far as St. Louis County is concerned. And they provided us a draft ordinance that did refer to the Board of Aldermen. We'll revise that. But yeah, everything included tonight is just kind of in draft form, and we're definitely open to any comments, suggestions, questions. And then after that, we would contact St. Louis County and start the implementation process. And we would choose a date and do our very best to inform, all of our residents here in the city as best we can that this is going to start, and then eventually start the program. And we would finalize any applications, update the website, put everything out via social media, and do our very best to inform people as best as we can. And so the department has provided draft documentation for implementation of the program, as well as implementation of the actual process, like both behind the scenes and what the city would need to do in order to get there, as well as how the resident would be able to, follow this process. And there's a bit of flexibility in that. I'm going to share my screen if I can get it up. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so included in your packet was just kind of a sample draft of the residential occupancy instructions that, we will provide something like this on our website to help guide people through the process. The actual process is a bit flexible, and I spoke with Mike Kohler over at St. Louis County, who deals with it more on this end. And it turns out that we can actually submit your occupancy inspection application here before going to county, and they could potentially just go straight to county, get the inspection, and then they would notify us that it passed, and then we could actually just do an occupancy permit. So that way we can get information from the actual tenant. A lot of renters don't know who is going to be renting the property at the time of getting the inspection. And with St. Louis County, the inspections are good for 120 days. And so they have a few months, and it's good to have it taken care of at the time, but they don't necessarily know the tenant's information. So it's easier to keep it as two separate applications from my perspective. And then there would just be a nominal fee, like $25 or something, just to cover the administrative costs of doing the data entry and such for the actual permit itself, which is common practice in most cities. And then on here, there's also, I listed out some frequently asked questions that is definitely, not all inclusive, and we will probably come up with more along the way. But I thought it was important to answer some of the questions that were asked at the last meeting, and also important to address like why this is important, why the city is making this step, the goal of this. And so those were listed there. So you had a bit of time to review it. I feel like the biggest pushback when it comes to occupancy programs is, duplication of inspection. People tend to feel that if they're getting a fire inspection, they don't necessarily need a municipal inspection, but a municipal inspection tends to be more extensive than a fire inspection. Fire inspections, they're looking to make sure that, you've got appropriate egress and, smoke detectors and things along those lines, whereas an occupancy inspection on the municipal level covers the building code, the property maintenance code. It's pretty standard everywhere, and we would be using St. Louis County's, current building code, which is 2015 right now. And I mean, the basic rule of thumb with the inspection is they're pretty standard. If it's there, if it's broken, you have to repair it, replace it, or remove it, and so there isn't a whole lot of flexibility in picking and choosing the codes to enforce and not enforce. There's some, but not a lot. And then after that, we drafted just kind of a sample single family occupancy application, just to kind of show what all the information that we would be looking for. And again, this is just a very rough draft, but this is essentially what residents would bring to the city after they had their past inspection, proof of past inspection, and then the tenants would fill this out. And so this would be expected with every change of tenant. And I spoke with county about that as well. And they do every change of tenant for multifamily as well as single family. Again, the cities tend to have they will work with cities as to what we expect, but that's pretty standard practice. So that being said, I think that we've covered everything that I have. Yep, I believe so, unless there are any questions now, but with that wraps up the department's presentation, but we do have Kurt here that I can let in to further discuss this.
I have one question, related to the frequently asked questions. I know it's just a draft that is workable. One of the things that stood out to me was where it said, what happens if I don't pass the inspection the first time? And it says most homes will not pass an inspection the first time. Is there like a specific reason why I guess I'm just worried that like that type of verbiage is gonna make people think like we're being overly aggressive, like we're gonna fail everybody the first time type thing, as opposed to.
It was actually supposed to be comforting, not aggressive,
Yeah.
so maybe we just need to
And I'm
change
not-
the verbiage, but
Well,
yeah.
and I'm just thinking about it from the standpoint of like a
Sure.
real estate agent or a prospective seller that they're wanting things to move smoothly and quickly because they're trying to get the deal done, which if they don't meet code, they don't meet code. But if we come out saying, well, you're
Yeah.
probably gonna fail anyway the first
Right.
time.
No, I
It's almost like
completely
we're
understand.
telling them they're setting up for failure off the bat.
We will unquestionably rephrase that, but yeah, it has been my experience that, most houses, and it's generally like silly things, it's not
Right.
necessarily huge repairs or something like that, but it is very rare in my experience that a house passes its first go
Yeah,
around.
and you're probably right. I'm just saying,
Right. No,
as far
I-
as like how they would perceive it, to where maybe we just say, ask the question, what if I don't pass the first time? Well, the good news is that
You get
you get
another
two
one.
inspections automatically.
Sure,
So it's kind of
Yes,
like,
I will
in case you
definitely-
didn't pass the first time, you're good.
we'll get rid of that.
Councilmember Rambo?
And we uncover minor problems. Typically uncover minor problems, or just, you can soften it a whole bunch, but my question is, it says $25 a couple of places. We were talking about like 75 or something like that. I just want to make sure we're covering
Sure.
every bit of the actual cost to the city of providing the clerical effort and so on and so forth, because you guys are already overworked, and if we give you another task, we might as well, fully pay for your effort, so maybe we can add another person at some point or something like that. So can you talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple ways that cities do this, and essentially, like, for example, a single family occupancy inspection through St. Louis County is $95 for not unincorporated areas. Yeah, so municipalities that contract, the occupancy inspection itself is $95. So that fee would go to St. Louis County, and we can go through this a couple of ways. We can either have people bring their applications to the city, and then we can sign off on it, but I mean, it's essentially the same zoning, it's residential. Or we can just direct people straight to St. Louis County to get the inspection that way, which would actually lessen the work on us. And then they would pay for the $95 there for the actual inspection, and that would all be dealt with through there. The $25 or $30 or however much you want to for the actual permit, the only thing that we will have to do for the permit is data entry, essentially, and we might not even have to do that because they'll be able to do it on MyGov, and so it's basically, most cities have a nominal fee, just literally for administrative work of, filing the paperwork and such. And so that $25, $30, that should cover our work because it's very limited on that end.
I would strongly suggest one check, even though no one writes checks anymore. It's $125. You take it to the county, and if there's some mechanism to pay us that, our portion of that fee, that makes a lot of sense to me, because part of the hassle for folks is, okay, I gotta pay the city 25 and I gotta pay 95 to the county and this and that kind of thing. If they paid 125, well, that's what the inspection costs. I think it would solve a lot of complaints.
Yes and no. So when I was over at the city of Manchester, that's how we originally had it. It was one application, and people paid I think it was actually $150 for an occupancy inspection there. And they would bring the paperwork to us, but most of the renters didn't actually have the information for the tenants on it. And so most of the renters will have their occupants pay the $25 to go get their actual occupancy permit. And so that way the renter is paying the $95 for the inspection to ensure that that's all completed. And then they'll
Oh,
pass the
okay, so it's a
paperwork on
separate
to the
deal. Okay, sure, that makes
rentee,
perfect
and
sense,
they'll
sure.
come in and get their own occupancy permit. And so I found separating the two rather than trying to dig up the paperwork and add information to it later and all of that, it keeps it less messy rather
Great,
than making it messier. So.
Teresa?
Yeah, see, there were a couple of things I saw. That was one of the things I was gonna ask about, but, just on the residential occupancy instructions,
Mhm.
and I know this is draft, but it says Wildwood Department of Department.
Excellent catch.
And it says one said have approved. And then there was one other little spot, down under provide, it says they will need this obtained. Instead
Oh.
of to obtain,
All
Just
right,
a-
there we go.
just a couple of little notes. I was a homeschool mom, so.
No, I appreciate it.
pen
We
out
definitely would not want to send that out to residents reading that way. That's for sure.
Refer to you as Miss Clark.
Mom. But, and then you said that on the questions, that Monarch, it says Metro West Fire Department Protection District requires an inspection. What about, does that mean that Monarch and Eureka don't?
They don't at this time.
Don't, okay. I
We may
just,
want to
that-
put that
yeah.
into the answer so that people.
Yeah.
understand
Real
that.
confusing otherwise.
Mhm.
Would you want to put an asterisk and say subject to change?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And the one other thing is, how are we gonna measure the effectiveness of this program? Or is it worth the time it takes to do it? How do we measure that? Is it benefiting us, and how does it benefit? How do we measure that?
You know, truth be told, I don't know that there's an accurate way of measuring it. I feel that when it comes down to occupancy inspections, I mean, you would notice probably less code enforcement violations or calls or, I mean, honestly, the purpose of the occupancy inspection is to get into the inside of a house that we don't normally see in order to ensure that people are safe. And so therefore, I'm not sure that there's a means of.
Well, how do you know, how can we measure if we are keeping them safer? If we are finding things that should be fixed?
I would say by the number of things that are corrected on an inspection.
So maybe we can keep some kind of a tally of that, just so that we have a measure.
Well, and if it's, well, I would say that when it comes to St. Louis County, like if St. Louis County is doing the actual inspections, then they would know the violations and we wouldn't necessarily,
To be
Have
interested
that
in
list
that,
of
asking that
corrections.
question.
Can't we get a report? I mean,
perhaps.
Maybe how many
that's definitely-
inspections were
Per-
performed and what
Can it
violations?
answer
I think
were-
he could probably answer
I
those
think that
questions.
that's definitely a question that, okay,
Ms. Clark, there may be a way to do this, as Melanie mentioned, with our reoccupancy inspections, looking at property maintenance and building codes, principally, at least in terms of property maintenance, the exterior of the building. You may be able to plot a drop in the number of code violation requests we get, things like that. So, as we see inspections rise, we see property maintenance request from neighbors drop or, do a corresponding or something. So let us think on that. There may be a couple of metrics out there we could use. I think of that almost immediately. And then obviously we could contact the fire district and just see what metric they use, since they've been doing it for a number of years now.
Thank you.
all right. Mr. Jurgens, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you heard, there are a few questions that I don't necessarily know the answers to, and hoping you could assist.
Sure.
Did-
If I could address your previous discussions on the statement, most homes won't pass the first inspection. Maybe just change most to if a home doesn't pass,
Or,
the follow-up inspection is included. So, to cover any items that, yeah, it could be that simple that way. You know, it lets them know that, well, you know, I don't know if it'll pass or not, but if it doesn't, we got a follow-up inspection that's already included, so we can catch any items that way. So it's a little less aggressive, I guess.
Thank you for
Um,
the suggestion.
Also, it sounds like you've got a good plan and organization on phasing this in. There will be a transition period. I think all of you are probably aware of that, because you know your residents aren't used to it now, and just getting out there, getting the word out, having those meetings like you mentioned is good. Outreach to the community to let them know, you know, what you're, you know, planning or would like to do, and the reasons why, how it will help the residents and the neighborhoods around there maintain the standards and things like that. So that's good to hear that you guys are looking ahead at, and sort of foresee those things that will probably come up as this is transitioned in.
And then Councilmember Clark had a question regarding how we could potentially, with the county's assistance, be able to measure, you know, how many applications there are per se, the data to be able to track how many applications, and then the number of violations and what those violations might have been that had to be corrected, so that we can kind of be able to measure the level of effectiveness of the program in itself as far as.
Sure. You, since you already contracted with us for the building and commercial and residential building, we send out weekly permit reports on the permits that are pulled on those areas. We do the same thing for reoccupancy permits. So once you contract for that, we'll have another report that sends out each week. It runs on Sunday evening, so you know, whoever gets it there will get it Monday morning. You'll see what permits were pulled the previous week. You can work with Mike Kohler, who's the supervisor of the reoccupancy inspections there, as far as getting comments on what violations. I don't know myself if they provide those without any requests, but you know, certainly they do have the ability to I don't know how they're set up as far as sending the violations there, but I do know there, you know, we have a CELA customer or citizen access, which can be signed in, and you know, certain things on the permits can be viewed there. But I'll have to check to see about the violations, if those can be sent to you also. But certainly you'll have access to all the permits that are pulled and the addresses, things like that. And most likely you'll be able to see what stage they're at too.
Councilmember Ottenberg?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So question for Mr. Jurgens and for Ms. Ripito and Mr. Vunich. When do we know what the top 3 or 4 items are that would typically lead to a home not passing inspection? I mean, does the 80-20 rule apply, where there's like 3 or 4 items that most commonly would cause a home to not pass inspection? If there is, I wonder if we could provide a list to residents of things that they might check prior to the inspection taking place, so that we can increase the likelihood that the home passes inspection the first time.
I 100% agree, and most cities do actually have a checklist of, you know, common violations found and such. And in my experience, a lot of it's been, you know, GFCI is not, or dedicated outlets and not in the right place, or smoke detectors, you know, well, sometimes you need more than you used to, or carbon monoxide detectors now. Like generally, it's not large things. And I know apartment complexes used to send a guy around with me that had smoke detectors in a box, so he could just put them up and pass. But yeah, I don't, Mr. Jurgens, what's your experience on most common violations?
What I would suggest, I'm not involved in the day-to-day, but if you reach out to Mike Kohler, the supervisor, he can tell you right off the bat, I would imagine, because I mean, he's in it every day. He hears from the inspectors, and you can ask them what are, you know, he can ask his group, what are your top 5 violations that you continually run over, and he can get you a real up-to-date list on that. And that's a good idea. Put those out to the residents to let them know, these are common things. You can get your inspection passed much quicker and easier if you take care of these yourself before you call the inspection in. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and one question I had also, because we're looking at implementing this strictly for rental properties, what method of tracking or enforcement do we have to know which properties require this? I know we know that it's rentals, but we all know that in most cases, people are gonna want to not have to get an inspection if they don't have to, or they can get around doing it. So if a property changes ownership, or even in a different case where perhaps like the tenants move out, and then how are we gonna know that this property is a meets the criteria that requires an inspection versus one that wouldn't? Because somebody could just say, well, I'm gonna live there myself, I'm buying it as an owner occupied, and then after the fact, I decided to rent it out, or something to avoid. I'm just saying, most people are gonna do anything they can to avoid doing an inspection if there's a way to not have to, especially the ones that would potentially be violating it. They're gonna even more so be looking for a workaround. So I'm just wondering, because it's only a certain number of properties that meet the criteria that require the occupancy inspection, how are we gonna be able to monitor who needs to be doing it or who didn't do it that should have, or that kind of thing?
So from my experience, we've used like Ameren listing, changeover of utilities to track, a change in a new tenant. And once you have certain properties that are rental properties, then it's easier to keep an eye on, those specific addresses. Starting from scratch and not having, any, you kind of have to match up, is this owner, consistent with what's listed in St. Louis County? It takes a little bit of research, but for the most part, like once you get a few years into it, it gets easier to track. And once the information gets out there, and we can enforce it through code enforcement if we find renters that don't, and or include, fines or something like that. It ends up costing more for your occupancy permit if you move someone in without. So there are ways of addressing it. Oh, yeah, except the problem with the map. So I created a map, but it's with the 2022 documentation. So it shows vacancies, all of the vacancies, and vacancies based on different types of properties. And as of right now, the city has 1,721 units that are not owner occupied, just based on St. Louis County's data from 2022. We have 810 multifamily, 40 duplexes, and 861 single family, and they're actually pretty well distributed throughout the city. So it's surprising as to where all they're located. And so there are ways of looking into it, but again, that data only gets updated so often that I can pull on the back end, but their map, their property viewer, and the real estate property search is more up to date than the data that I can download. And so there are ways of looking into it, but it takes some effort, that's for sure.
I guess, Mr. Chair, what I would say is that's kind of our starting point. We have 1,000. Most fortunately are in a few complexes, the 800 plus. But we also then know we have about 200 more. And those are the database that we would start with. And kind of those would be the ones we track.
No, I'm just trying to make sure that people aren't able to kind of, and maybe working with the HOAs to let them know and say,
Absolutely.
please let the city know, because the HOAs are gonna be wanting to make sure that the properties are following code, and most HOAs are probably not thrilled about, rental properties to start with, so
That's
they're
usually
probably
how we
gonna be
hear about
happy
it.
to let the city know. They think
If you could work out some kind of reciprocating program where we gave them the information for their subdivision, because they're gonna try to collect dues and their assessments, they give us change of property owners. I mean,
Sure.
that would be as trustee for many years, and I was small, but I mean, I
Yeah.
just know so many of them deal with that you could say, hey, look, we're trying to do this to help you as well. So whenever you have a property transfer, because technically they should give them the deed or the actual indentures at that time of sale. And so maybe that would be another way. They get something by giving us something to work with, because I guarantee every trustee's had to deal with a problem on a rental house.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's we hear a lot. And once you get the information out there, I think that that's key in making it a successful program is, the more people know about it, you of course will always have those people that are trying to skate around it, or they lose a tenant in 6 months and they're mad about it and they, just want to move somebody else in and don't feel that they need to, there's always going to be a bit of a cat and mouse game, but there are ways of looking it up. And, the Ameren, like the utility switchover has always been very helpful to us. And you can get a monthly report on that and go through and, compare it to what the county sends over as far as the reoccupancy inspections are concerned.
Councilwoman Clark?
Yeah, so is this for apartment buildings also? This is for that too. So are there things that we need to somehow add in here that if it's a violation, that whole building would be to be. I'm just thinking of if there's violations with permitting or inspection that's gonna affect the whole building and not just that one.
So, yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. And in my experience, there haven't been a whole lot of violations with apartment buildings or a single unit that have been, detrimental to the health of apartments around them. There have been a few incidents, but I mean, it's usually like a hoarding issue or say a plumbing issue or bed bugs, something extreme. But most apartment violations and apartments, they have to be kept up to a certain standard. And most multifamily, I don't know if all multifamily or if it's just the one fire district, but they're generally treated as commercial buildings anyway. And so they've received fire occupancy inspections. But from speaking with Mr. Kohler earlier, they just do inspections on the units themselves and not necessarily the whole building. But if there was a situation, I'm sure that they would bring it to our attention and we could.
I'm just wondering if we need to have something in this. My sister is an apartment manager in Grand Rapids, and she had told me recently that she had to shut down one building, the whole building, because of some violation that was.
Yeah, well, if it's that serious of a violation, it would probably be more of a condemnation process than.
It wasn't, it was, I think it was an older area and because there was a possibility of asbestos, I think was. what it was.
Okay.
So she had to shut down the whole building, not just one unit. So I'm sure there's other things, maybe wiring or maybe whatever that could cause that. So should we have something in there?
The building codes address that, and so therefore I don't think that we need to go above and beyond what's already, what's there. And so if it is something detrimental to the health of others, it's something that we have to address. Unless you have, unless I'm missing anything, Mr. Jurgens.
No, yeah, you're correct. That should be covered more on the building code side, asbestos, anything of that nature. Reoccupancy covers, I think there's a couple checklists that goes through most of those things. I'm not sure what the specifics are on that one project that you're mentioning with the apartment where they found asbestos all of a sudden, but certainly, you can run into situations where if something's wrong on one apartment, a lot of times it's the same in all the other apartments. Like if, it's faulty GFIs installed or something like that, most likely you're going to find that in the other apartments. So that can be handled several ways as they change occupancy. They can switch them out. The manager will know that to expect that for the other apartments. But asbestos, that was phased out back in the 60s. So most of the problems have already been identified. It's only when it's disturbed that you have a problem. So
Katie, if you have a different question, can I follow up on this one? Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so I'm thinking something like a multi-family unit with exterior stairs, a banister missing, that would be a problem for everyone. And it wouldn't be caught in a building code inspection because the building is already existing. And so there are things like that, or if the basement has recently flooded and it's a common basement, that would affect the entire, everybody. So there are situations where we would have to do, as Teresa suggests, we have to cover those bases as well, I think.
Metro West will do the,
Metro West does that. They do check banisters and stairs and
on the
those
back
kinds.
deck or something if there's.
Okay, because you have to have egress, so.
Yeah, and they check that. It's gotta be stable too. It's not, can't be wobbly. They'll make you, they won't let you.
What about
do
a
that.
flooded storage area in the common?
Never had one for them to inspect, but I do believe that if we would have them do the fire district first, at least with Metro West, all the GFIs, all the safety things, and because you pay the fire taxes that high, they will come out, they'll give you a checklist. They have to come back to pass it.
So maybe it's not the problem I'm seeing, but
As far as loose banisters or any kind of like exterior, anything like that, that's something that we can address through code enforcement.
Okay.
And
who
it's,
would catch it though, is the question.
well, that would be, I mean, you know what, Mr. Jurgens is raising his hand and I bet he has a great answer. for
Okay,
this.
yeah. One it's covered.
He
Right.
gets it every day.
I didn't want to jump right in there, but
Thanks.
the REAC inspections do the common areas on the apartments on a set schedule, and you can talk to Mike Kohler on how that's done, but they do go into those common areas. Sometimes you'll have mailboxes, or like you said, down in the basements where they have the hot water heaters and some HVAC or whatever. So they do those on apartment buildings on a set schedule. So you can get with him. Those are definitely something they look at every year, at least once a year, maybe every 6 months, but Mike will know on that, so.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Godwell?
I just had a question regarding the information on the permit application that you have here. Who's supposed to be filling that out is my first question. Who fills the permit application out?
So, technically like the owner or the tenant could fill it out. I've seen some
Okay,
owners fill it out on behalf of their tenants, but the majority of the time it would be the tenant.
okay,
And
and
you can require both signatures on there if you want to. But having somebody sign for responsibility is important to us.
okay, and you've got the property address listed with the owner, and then you've got the applicant. What's an applicant? Is that the tenant?
Yeah, so the applicant, and if it was the owner that was filling it out, they could just write same there. But if it was the applicant, if the applicant is different than the property owner, so.
Maybe make it applicant tenant or tenant
Yeah,
specifically so that we know.
the reason that
You
I
want-
like to include both
Yeah,
of
I
those on
understand.
there is honestly from a code enforcement perspective.
Okay,
So that we can tie people to properties. One of the hardest things that we've had to do is tracking people down in a way that like the judicial system will accept,
well, yeah, I definitely understand the reason we need to have the owner of the property clearly identified.
But a
So-
tenant could and should also be responsible for it.
Yes.
If it's their issue,
Yes.
that's being caused here, so.
And then under the names required section on that form,
Mhm.
you've got principal, owner, occupant. There again, there's that question.
Oh, occupant, yes,
And
correct.
then you've got second, third, fourth, fifth occupant. Does that mean that if somebody's going to rent an apartment, they have two children and a mother-in-law that they have to bring into, that they have to list all those names? I'm just curious.
So yes, that's for multiple reasons. One, for schools, it's important to have children on there. Sometimes you have to prove that you live there. Also, it's good for our police department because then they know who should and shouldn't be in the house, depending on who's listed on the occupancy permit. And then also there's occupancy regulations, like you can only have X amount of people live in a house as per bedrooms and size of the house and common spaces and stuff. And so it helps with that as well.
Okay, you may want to put that in your question sheet,
Perfect.
so that I'm getting ready to rent out my house and I didn't know I had to keep track of all of that. And then also under that same category where you've got relationship,
Mhm.
if age is a requirement, maybe put age as a column in there too, so that you know that you've got an underage child or 2 or 3 or 4 in
Sure.
that building, or that apartment
Okay,
or that house. And then you may want to also put under the planning and zoning use only, the amount of the fee that's supposed to be paid or something, just so everybody who might be doing paperwork remembers to get the right amount.
yeah, absolutely. We left those blank because I figured that was gonna be probably a subject of, discussion.
Okay. But otherwise, I think it's great to have the little cheat sheet for anybody who owns a property and or will be a renter tenant. And if we can make this form a little bit cleaner, I think we'll be fine.
We also send out new resident packets to all of our new residents. And that being said, we would definitely include the brochure in there so that if it was applicable and somebody did need to, get an occupancy permit and they didn't know about it or didn't get one, then they would be made aware with their new resident packet. So,
Gotta be late on that, right? At that point, they'd already be moved in.
they would be late, but again, I feel like there's a deliberate versus not deliberate. Maybe we should put in the FAQs.
Oh, maybe we give it like a grace period of like a year or something like that to implement, just so people can get acclimated to it.
Right. I mean, there's definitely,
You would start it with new rentals as of a certain date.
Right, but I'm
That
saying
way you
like,
wouldn't go
give a
backwards.
grace period of like not charging a fine. Like if somebody moved in and then they got the welcome pack and they were like, oh man, we were supposed to do this and we didn't do it. And they contacted the city and said, we weren't there, but we got this thing and now we're realizing. Like, you know what I mean? Give them the grace, like,
A 30-day grace period or something.
well, no, I'm just saying for like the first year, the city implements it to say, just because a lot of people might not be aware of it because it's a new policy.
Okay,
Or
We'll do our
people
best
kind
not
of
to be too harsh.
self-report, or like we find out, it's like, hey, this is new, as long as they're gonna comply.
yeah, the last thing that we want to do is scare people into not getting an occupancy inspection. So that's not our goal. And our goal is also not to welcome new residents with, hey, here's a fine. It's the objective is to make,
Yeah.
To get the inspection, to make it safer to, keep things up. So,
Councilwoman Clark?
And something that Katie said, triggered my thought to wondering, the age, when she asked you about putting age on there. And this may be not something we can do or we want to do, but what about a special needs column? Because like everywhere we've moved, I always have to go to the police department, now Marcus is gone, he works in Seattle, so he does it himself, but I always went to the police department and the fire department and told them, I have a son that's deaf and he's in this bedroom and I'll have a sticker on the door and, things like that. So,
I think it's an excellent suggestion. I find that there's a very fine line that we walk with too much information on here and not enough. Because there are a lot of people that don't want to put their kid's age on here,
yeah.
or don't want, to.
it could
And
just say
so-
optional.
That's what I was gonna say. I think that having things in there that's optional, or maybe even a comment section, and
And then in
include on there
parentheses.
that, if this is helpful for the police department, but these are subject to sunshine law.
Mhm.
And so anybody could
Yeah,
get this information, and so,
so if it's
That's-
voluntary, then I
Yeah,
think we
I-
can.
Yeah.
I would put it on there because I would it helps.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So yeah, having it optional, just.
It's optional, then put why it helps.
Right.
Mhm.
For emergency response purposes and people I
So-
think would be able to helpful.
Mhm.
So in regards to the action that the department's looking for tonight from the committee, you're looking for us to provide direction on moving forward with the community meetings to introduce the parameters of this and the implementation to the residents?
Correct. If this is, if you feel that this is sufficient information to like move forward, you know, before ironing out the details and such, yes, the next step we would be looking to do is meet with the community.
Actually, if you don't
No,
mind.
no, by all means.
I would prefer to refine the information. Take Mr. Jurgen's advice and talk to Mr. Kohler
Mhm,
a little bit more about a couple of the FAQs and that,
sure.
and then bring it back to you at the December meeting for final action. And then new year, we'll start the outreach then, almost immediately, and then we can kind of move
Yeah.
on from there. But I think you'll all already see it based upon the comments we've heard one last time.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Kind of refine it. That way we can make sure we've got all the I's dotted, T's crossed.
Sure,
Before
absolutely.
we start rolling it
Can
out.
we do a few more questions?
Yeah, go
before we
ahead,
get
Councilmember
that
Marshall.
So I guess this one, Kurt, would be for you, is when you go in and implement this the first time and start through, could you share with us how many, the reaction, and then I guess a little bit more detailed on it, because I really believe this is where we're gonna get pushed back, is we have a fire department that has a very tight program. And so we'll be going back in and they will immediately see that as a duplication. So when you have those that don't have a fire department inspection, which we'll have, half the city won't, and then you have those that do, what do you see as you implement it in a new city? Where do you see some of the things, if you had a do-over, you'd do differently?
I was just coming into the municipal contracts position at the end when all of that was going on in the county. I was doing, I was training officer, but in a different function. So I was aware of, there was a duplication in the county, the same thing. The fire departments, not only were they doing reoccupancy inspections, but a lot of them had taken over actually building, plan review and inspecting buildings like that. So they, I believe the Missouri courts curbed that back. I mean, they had overextended their mandate, I guess, and they pretty much backed off doing anything outside of just fire inspections for, like Ms. Repto mentioned, smoke CO detectors, proper egress, things like that, safety issues, fire ratings on apartments, fire separation walls, things like that. But I mean, once they're built, you can't really do anything about that. They can't come in and ask to upgrade things like that. But so I can't really talk about how our transition. I do know it was a big court battle for a while, and that got resolved, and we haven't really had a problem with that. I think once you start your reoccupancy program, they'll probably back off on their own. They're only doing it because there isn't anything there right now that will help, protect the safety of the occupants. So that's my feeling, I guess.
Would you happen to have a time period? So from the first inspection, they have how many days to make the corrections and then have you come back? And how tight is the schedule for the county inspector to get back to do that second inspection? Because once these
I
people
see.
have it set up, they
Yeah.
want to rent it right away.
Right. That's actually a better question for Mike Kohler. He's the day-to-day. I know they try to get back as quick as possible, and a lot of it depends on their workload at that time. But they are pretty efficient at getting back. I believe it's usually within a week that they do the follow-up inspection, because they don't like it to go too long. Because people tend to let things slide if you give them too much time, so. But Mike Kohler can answer those better than I can.
I
would
didn't
say.
go online to print the sheet. Does a print say everything they're gonna check? Is the form that
Oh.
you did?
Oh, yeah, they have a checklist of things that, and then thanks for reminding me, that does bring up on the apartments and homes they do the reoccupancy inspections on. They actually do measure the areas and will give a maximum occupancy that's allowed based on that unit and all that. So, you'll know if it says, it's approved for occupancy up to 4 people or something like that, and someone brings in your application that has 5 or 7 or 10 or some, we've gotten into situations where there's 2 or 3 families living in a house, and it's definitely over occupied. You'll know right off based on our inspection versus what they're actually bringing in for occupancy.
I only have one more. The last city or municipality that the county took over for the implementation of this, would you be able to tell us who that would be?
I could, but I have to go and research that. I can look at that up tomorrow morning and email Ms. Repito the last several that have we've contracted with. You're asking who we've most recently contracted for reoccupancy permits. Is that correct?
Pretty good chance they're gonna run in, they've already run into the problems that we'd be looking at, so.
Right. Yeah, I just have to open up I keep track of the contracts when, we make them and all that. So I should be able to find that and get that information to Ms. Repito tomorrow if you want.
Be great.
Okay, thank you.
Could I narrow it down just a little bit more? Happen to
Sure.
be in Metro West Fire District.
I don't know. Well, I can
I
give you
doubt
the
you do.
municipalities. Metro West, I think I've got a map of where they extend, so I can probably tell you on that. So Metro West,
It's everything south from Monarch to Eureka, but
Right.
there's a lot of little cities in there that
Yeah.
maybe, Clarkson Valley and some of the other smaller ones might already be doing this.
okay, yeah, let me look that up. I know I've got a map of all the different fire department or fire district areas, and that's overlaid on the municipality. So I should be able to, and I've got the list of the municipalities that contract for REOC, and I can go back and see when some of them, a lot of them have been in place for a long time though. So I don't, as far as,
Just curious, don't waste 10 minutes looking for it. I just thought maybe you might have remembered one of those, so.
actually, I've got my list of recent contracts here. Hold on a second, there's a couple of new ones for actually REOC that are in the Breckenridge Hills, that's sort of north. They put theirs in September 22. St. Anne was in 22, I believe. Yeah, June of 22. But those are north, not in Metro West. Let's see.
Did you say St. Anne on the last one?
Yeah, St. Anne. St. Anne and Breckenridge Hills. Those are, up sort of the Northwest Plaza area. I say Northwest Plaza. It'll always be Northwest Plaza to me.
We're all old enough to know what you meant.
Some of us know exactly where you mean.
That dates me, I know it, but let's see here. Hanley Hills. Let's see. Actually, I think they're taking over the REOC again. Yeah, we haven't had any that other than the recent one going back. Yeah, I don't see any other, I mean, there's been a bunch that have gone. Just adding property maintenance, but that's not REAC. Yeah, that's probably, those are the most recent ones and none of them are in, Metro West area out there.
Oh, that's fine, thank you.
Mhm.
Is that something, Director Vunich and Ms. Ripto, that we could get from Mr. Kohler too? You said, Mr. Jurgens, you said he keeps most of the data and collects all the data on all the different.
Well, yeah, he's in charge of all the day-to-day inspections, the REAC inspections. He supervises all those inspectors. So, yeah, he talks with them, daily, and he can ask if he doesn't know right off, he can ask them and be able to tell you anything fairly quickly on, as far as
Obstacles are running into or anything like
right, or what they're seeing the most as far as failed inspections, what fails the most and
that. Okay,
that type
Yeah.
of thing.
Does he have a name?
yeah, Mr. Kohler,
Oh,
Mr. Kohler that
Kohler.
that they're gonna talk to. Department's gonna talk to, so, okay, well,
That's great, thank you.
yeah, I think we got good comprehensive amount of information, unless anybody else has any last thoughts, but thank you very much, Mr. Jurgens, for joining us and appreciate all the feedback you were able to provide and the direction to further investigate this so that we can make sure we get it right when we roll it out.
Okay, one more note, when you get to that point, I think Ms. Repetto included the contract amendment and ordinances. There's only 2 ordinances that you need to do to implement this, and one is adopting the codes, and I usually re-adopt everything just because we in the contract amendment, we have to restate the scope of work, which restates everything you're currently contracted with. And then we just add that little blurb in there for including residential reoccupancy permits. That's actually in the property maintenance code, which is already part of your contract, but we have to add that in. So it's the ordinance to adopt the codes, the ordinance to authorize the mayor to sign the contract amendment, and then the contract amendment. So just 3 fairly short documents signed by both the mayor and the city clerk. And once you do that, I put them through St. Louis County, and it generally takes about a week now, week to 2 weeks at the most. It used to take months. But we're on DocuSign now, so everyone can do it electronically on their computers, and it goes really fast. I'm really happy we did that. But from that end, once you guys are ready and decide to do it, it's a fairly painless implementation. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, just let me know if you need me back again. I'd be happy to attend another meeting if you want to go over anything else.
Awesome. Thanks.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thank you. All right, moving right along. That takes us to the next matter under.
Could I ask one more question?
Yeah.
I hate to do this,
Yeah,
but
Councilman.
before they do all of their work,
Sure.
just thinking out loud about the process and understanding how property owners work, wouldn't it make sense that the property owner fills out that first document with the county? And then whoever they want to rent to has to apply for the applicant. Because the property owner has to make the check. If I own the house, I'm not gonna go in and make changes in the house for a renter. If they just say, you go get it yourself, Melanie, you do it. Where if the property owner were to have to fill that out and get it approved, they'd have to get the fire one approved. Otherwise, I think you're gonna get people moving in. They'll never do it. They'll keep telling, it's just like paying rent. They'll keep telling the property owner, no, I'll get it to you. I'll get it to you. Where if you could get in front of it by, if you want to rent your properties in the city of Wildwood, the property owner, and I would tell you that I bet half of that 30%, they don't even live in Wildwood.
Mhm.
So, but they're the ones that are responsible for the property itself. The renters aren't going. My folks used to have a lot of rental property in Pennsylvania. We could write a whole book on what people do that are renting your property and then try to get them out of there.
Sure.
It's just a real challenge, but I just think if you kind of look at the interest of the property owners to get it rented. the applicant is gonna find out wherever they can get in for the least amount of down payment as quickly as possible. They're not a big one to go get inspections done because they don't actually own the property. And they'll say, well, that's a property owner's problem.
Sure. So my goal is to get anybody I can to fill out the application and get the inspection done. And sometimes it's not necessarily the property owner, sometimes it's a management company, you know, and sometimes it is the tenant that is wanting to move in and move forward with it and say it's an out of town property owner. And so I think that limiting it doesn't necessarily do us any good. You know, it slows down the process.
I just think you're gonna get a lot more complaints about the process being slowed down by the city because they get it out of order. And, you know, again, the county with their inspectors, I did remodels for inside a commercial building at a low-grade electrical inspector, be 2 weeks before you come back. You couldn't put drywall up to wait because they didn't have enough inspectors to do it.
Sure.
And you're paying by the day on that construction project. So having the ability to turn it around, I think would be the same thing if you own the property and you want to rent it. You're gonna have to do the work because the renter is not gonna come in and do any of that stuff.
Oh, and they might not. And so that's honestly why I think it's important to have both on the actual occupancy form is so that we do have somebody that's responsible and they're signing here saying that they are responsible. But as far as getting the inspection, you know, and again, if the inspections just go straight through county and we're not actually handling them here, then that would be requiring St. Louis County to like add that stipulation on which complicates things. So I mean, if we want to do something like that, we would have to do it in-house first before it went over to St. Louis County.
Well, why would you have to do that? If they have to have a county inspection?
Sure, but if we're requiring that it's the property owner and only the property owner that can fill out this application, that's something that we'd have to regulate because St. Louis County isn't going to ensure that it is only the property owner that fills out that form. So when we start regulating beyond what St. Louis County requires, then that's something that we would have to handle in-house.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I just,
Yeah, and perhaps if we require the property owner has to sign the permit form, right?
Yeah, like for their occupancy.
I'm just saying,
permit.
cause even if like the renter fills out the application to turn in, the property owner ought to have to be required to sign it before it can be processed, just for the simple fact that I might have rented it to Rob or whatever, and now all of a sudden there's like 5 other people that are supposedly moving in that I don't even know of as a property
Sure.
owner. And I would never know that if they applied for that permit without me
For the
seeing the
actual
form to sign off
occupancy
on it. Yeah,
Permit.
to make sure that the information that they're putting on there matches what I'm expecting as a owner.
Sure, well, and I think that having some sort of stipulation at the bottom of it that says, you know, everything on this application is true to the best of my knowledge, and maybe have a space for both people to sign. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
All right, good. I think we
I'm
got-
anxious to see it, the next step.
I'll
We gotta
work
go
on
for-
getting all of this straightened out
Yeah,
and
yeah.
bring it to you next month.
I
with-
just-
I think the good thing is we had a
It's
good
kickstarted.
conversation about making sure that we've got the most amount of questions that we can address and look at, so that coming back, we'll just have a lot more.
And if you think of any like questions, like frequently asked questions or something along the way that didn't get addressed tonight or that you'd like to see included in there, by all means, feel free to email me the question and I'll ensure that it gets on there by the next meeting.
I really do think one of the biggest communication challenges will be the fire districts. Because they do have it buttoned down. I mean, Metro West will say if your house is over 10-year-olds, the GFIs are gonna need to be raised. If you put a banister up, it's gotta be less than 4 inches. I mean, theirs is very, very restrictive. But if you go to Eureka and you don't have to do it,
Mhm.
then if the county says you have to do it, then that will trump that. So you just wanna make sure that we're not creating more doubt.
There will definitely be a difference in those homes that have been inspected by the fire department all of these years versus those homes that haven't been inspected in 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, there will unquestionably, there will be more challenges there.
And a lot more repair work.
Probably.
I think also the other last piece of information to make sure we communicate effectively, and I think that we'll probably have a lot of public participation against, and when it goes to council, is gonna be from real estate agents.
Well, and that's part of the reason for the meetings that we'd like to orchestrate, and it's to get those major stakeholders, you know, like say apartment complex, you know, management, those people that would be most affected by the change, to get that out and have the opportunity to have that discussion and explain why we're going this way and, you know, give people an opportunity to.
Make it as seamless as
Make it-
possible.
Right, and so we'll get that out to as many people as possible and maybe that have more than one meeting because of that. We'll have one for the general public and one for the stakeholders, you know, because there's.
I definitely do one for the trustees.
Right, well, and maybe bring the
But
trustees in with them, with the major stakeholders, you know, it's.
Yeah.
And just see what kind
Trustees
of response we get and, you know, the community involvement, but yeah, that's. Part of the goal is to get ahead of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for the work you put into that and the
Can we have like a draft timeline for that so we can see all of the different meetings that we need to have?
Yes, absolutely, I will work on that as well.
awesome. All right. Good there. Occupancy permit discussion is officially done.
Dude.
All right, now we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the overview of plan updates over the upcoming 5-year period of time. Director Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, at the recent board and commission appreciation event, the department was asked on a couple of occasions about just updates to our core planning documents. And so I thought tonight it might be beneficial just to kind of identify those for you. So you can see what's kind of coming down the pipe. And also there's a couple of new items I just want to touch upon briefly. First and foremost, the master plan will actually start next year. As you will recall, the original master plan was adopted in February '96. It was updated at its 10-year mark in 2006 and also in 2016. So if we follow the same pattern or process, which includes a citizen volunteer committee overseeing the process, it usually takes about a year or so to get from point A to point B, which is the conclusion. So sometime in September of next year, we'll start laying out options for this committee to consider in terms of the best process to update the master plan. The other two plans, the action plan for Parks and Recreation and Town Center plan, as you know, were recently updated. So there's a bit of a sunset out there that's a bit away, but I did include them on there. There are two new plans. The first is a historic preservation plan. And as you'll recall from some memorandums from the department, the State Historic Preservation Office visited recently and did an audit of the city of Wildwood as a certified local government, one of 39 in the state of Missouri. And one of the recommendations, and probably the only real recommendation that came out of the audit, was to consider a historic preservation plan. So I've identified that. We're to follow on that as well, but certainly something to consider. And then finally, last night you received the draft RFQ, request for qualifications, for the development of the storm water master plan. And that is something our watershed erosion task force has been discussing for many months. And we've reached that point where in 2024, we'd like to begin that process. And so we'll be coming back to you through the watershed erosion task force with recommendations on potential consultants for that process and process that the consultant is recommending, et cetera. So got a lot of work coming up in 2024 on a couple of things, particularly the master plan near the end of the new year, and more importantly, the stormwater master plan. And so if there are any questions on any of these, Mr. Ripito and I'd be glad to try to address them. Thanks.
Any questions?
Just a visual.
Sure.
Next time you talk about it, bring the first master plan. And bring the second master plan. It's an eye opener. I remember the first time Mike Mine said, well, here's a master plan. It's like, when am I ever gonna read this thing? Well, then a few years later, it's like this. So it's come a long way from the beginning.
Well, and I'll attribute the reduction and readability to Kathy Arnett. Kind of looked at the original master plan.
I think I still have this.
And said, we can do better, can't we? And she said, yeah, I think we can. So.
Councilmember Rambo?
Does that process sort of incorporate what the T-cut did, because that took forever, and I think it, in some senses, it went in the wrong direction, in my opinion, in terms of reducing the density in town center, which is the only place we have density. So is that an opportunity to revisit that, or is it outside the scope of the town center?
Well, certainly the town center is a component of the master plan from the perspective of the conceptual land use categories map. But what I will tell you is in each of the master plan updates, we used a moderator or facilitator to lead the meetings. And I think that makes a world of difference. Doesn't necessarily depend on an elected chair which was the case in T-cut from the group itself. And in this instance, it was Terry Jones, Dr. Terry Jones from UMSL. And he was good at keeping us focused on the discussion items and the items that were identified from one meeting that we were going to basically cover in the next. So that would be my recommendation if we do any kind of public process with a group of volunteers, to bring in an independent facilitator or moderator to help.
And you guys have input, like as our professional planners, you have input like on density questions and those kinds of things.
And we can debate the back and forth. Have we gone in the wrong direction in town?
Yeah, I shouldn't have started that part, but
Like I
that's
say,
just my opinion.
there's just so many trends that seem to indicate that residential is probably where we need to settle in more in town center than commercial, just because. And the density is just the preference, and what we heard from the public through the survey that we did, as well as in the meetings, everybody wants less density in town center.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, well, thank you very much, Director Vunich, and I look forward to those conversations continuing. moving forward.
And as I say, we'll probably start in earlier next year, January, February timeframe with the stormwater master plan discussions.
Very good. Well, that takes us to the next item on the agenda here, which is the Architectural Review Board and the dissolution of the entity. I think everybody saw the mayor's memo on that. And, what do you have for us, Joe?
So first and foremost, it was a late addition to the agenda, so my apologies. There's not a lot of background, so I'll do my best to explain the chronology that took us, for the most part, from last week till tonight. Obviously, the mayor is charged with filling vacancies on all of our board, commission, committees, task force, et cetera. And throughout the period of time from 1997, when the Architectural Review Board was established till now, it's always been a challenge to find architects to basically be members of that particular board. And in fact, it became so difficult, the 4 or 5 that we had stayed on for a decade or more, which is problematic because they inevitably start to lose a little enthusiasm, and it's just not a good situation. And so over the past few years, through the mayor's efforts, we've kind of tried to expand that universe of potential members by allowing urban planners, landscape architects, engineers, et cetera, or those with interest in architecture to become part of the board. We've been kind of successful, but as the mayor told Mr. Lee, our city administrator, and I last week, it's still difficult to find people that actually want to serve on the board. So when asked by the mayor what the department thought in this regard, I explained to him that in 1997, before the town center plan was adopted, the Architectural Review Board was critical to the success of town center. We had a blank canvas. We really didn't know what all of these guidelines that Andres Tuani had provided would look like, and how to best interpret them for our community. And that's what the Architectural Review Board did. They took that kind of mass and molded it into what I'd like to think is a very unique town center relative to the metropolitan area, the state of Missouri and the Midwest. From that perspective, they were essential. But as time has gone on, we've basically created templates, and we have them for residential, commercial, institutional, and other activities in town center. And what we've learned from the Architectural Review Board, quite frankly, we put in the ordinances now through the Plan Residential Development Overlay District, the C8 Plan Commercial District. So all the things about quality materials, colors, garage doors, setbacks, it's all in the ordinance. And so we've taken that knowledge and applied it. And in doing that, we've kind of made them less integral in the process than more. And so, as the mayor described to you probably in his report, it's still a challenge to fill that board. And as we filled the board with other people, sometimes we're spending more time going back and explaining why we do things, not here's this is what is being proposed. For example, we had a sign variance request that comes to the board, the Architectural Review Board, and they were like, well, why do we do individual pinned on letters? Why can't we do different? And it's like we do those to avoid box signs, which are just the bane of any commercial center. They're just, aluminum box with a flat piece of plastic with stenciled letters on them and a light behind it, and they look terrible. And they yellow and they tarnish. So,
yeah.
So make long story short, the mayor is looking at dissolving the board. Our discussion said certainly if it becomes apparent that we have made an error, we can certainly come back and redo it. But in this instance, I actually think our Planning and Zoning Commission can do much of the same and do it in a more facilitated manner, and then end up hopefully reducing the time that people are spent in the process, while also achieving the same results. So the department did not object to the proposal was asked by Mayor Bowl.
So you're looking for the committee to provide action regarding recommending that the board be dissolved or not be dissolved?
What I would respectfully request is authorization to prepare a report under your authorship that would basically say that the committee would not object to the dissolution of the board based on these reasons.
Councilman Rodberg,
I would make a motion that we proceed as Mr. Bonich has suggested.
do we have a second on the motion? Councilmember Flasher, any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Clark, then Councilmember Dodwell.
I just wanted to say that I do agree with that because, by sitting on the Architectural Review Board, many times the architecture is very focused on architecture instead of looking at this whole project that's going on or the other things that are going on in the city that the Planning and Zoning Commission knows about. But the group on the architects on the board don't usually have that information. And sometimes they come in and the only thing they know is what's on this paper. And so it's really hard to make those decisions and to look at the whole picture with just this. And I've thought about that for a while, that, we needed more input the other way. And we started by letting the liaison vote as well as both liaisons vote, and that has helped some, but still there's so many things that the questions will probably still be there. Why do we have the pin on letters from the Planning and Zoning? But then you don't have it twice. And what I see in that group is, bless your heart, Joe comes in and he pretty much runs the meeting because the people that maybe are chairing it aren't in all of these meetings, other meetings, seeing how things are done and how they're chaired and all. And so it has to be like pulled along instead of a push system where you are leading. And I see that that's taken up a lot of energy that doesn't need to be done. So I am totally in agreement.
Okay. Councilmember Dodwell.
Just a quick question. Would this reduce the turnaround time or the processing time? I would hope. We don't have to have a special meeting of planning and zoning just for architectural review, do we? It's just part of their normal, here's this entity that wants to develop something and it's another checkbox on the review list that they're currently going through.
What I think the department has discovered over the years is we've always told applicants, you can do the site development plan process along with the architectural review board at the same time, parallel courses. But they're always hesitant for the reason I think Ms. Clark just identified. Because the P and Z may change something on the site plan that would impact the building and architecture. So it always seems to lag behind the site development plan. Now that you have the same entity involved in both, I think the likelihood of that happening is reduced. And we certainly would end up saving at least a month, if not 2 months of time.
Perfect, perfect.
Councilor Ratmer?
Yeah, I guess, one, to me, glaring, occurrence that sort of justifies the dissolution of the Architectural Review Board is in fact the, temple up on 109. That seemed to sneak up on many people here, somewhat unexpectedly in terms of the design that they have. It caught some people by surprise, and I think to, Councilmember Clark's point, the architects look at only the design itself. They don't take a look at the environment in which that design will be located. And as a result, sometimes you get a design suggested for something that really does not fit in with its surroundings.
Sure.
Now, I do understand that as a city, we had limited input into the design of that temple because of the Constitution and freedom of worship and that sort of thing. And talking to my son-in-law, who's actually from India, he confirmed that much of the design of that temple is part and parcel of their religious practices. So,
Sure. Yeah.
but it did sort of catch a number of people by
And
surprise.
I think at that point too, wasn't it the fact that the Architectural Review Board, once they made, once they authorized that to take place, the council or P and Z didn't even have the authority to change it?
There's an appeal process out of Architectural Review Board to City Council. But again, the appeal process is tilted toward the applicant, not the community.
Right.
And I think that is probably the best point one could come up for all of the planning and zoning commission meetings. We advertise information reports, we advertise letter of recommendations, obviously public hearings. So there is that element of public participation that's always been elusive with the Architectural Review Board. So good point. It'll be in the report.
Councilor Marshall?
Yeah, just a couple things. We have lost good projects because the Architect Review Board coming in. We waste a lot of time on it and nobody here's an architect, right? I have never seen a group of people so self-serving themselves. They would downright belittle somebody, an applicant, on that needs to be Hardy Board. No, it doesn't. That's not our code. I mean, and it actually got to the point that people regretted coming in front of that board. And it is very hard to find people, but I just think it'd be a great move to move on and speed that process up. And you guys can make those decisions for them, but it's frustrating because people dreaded coming in.
Yeah.
And what color bricks are you gonna use?
Yep.
Bring them in.
Councilmember Gladwell?
I'll make a motion, or did we already?
Here we have a motion and a second.
Okay.
All right, so any further discussion on the motion? It seems like, I think we're all in agreement.
Right.
on what we're doing here. So, okay, then with no further discussion, we'll do a voice vote, to move this forward. And so all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Motion
Thank you
passes.
all.
You got your direction. And then last under planning matters is the recent development trends, the city of Wildwood, which is information. Anybody have any questions about that for the department? Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, I just, from this report, just for clarification, so I understand what it's really for, is, so this report is generated for information only? Is it some metrics that comes from this that we use for something else?
Truly for information only, and that's why the format is as it's presented, to just give you the gross number of zoning authorization, building permits, and then to kind of keep you abreast of what's going on with the major development proposals that require some type of action, either by commission or city council or both. So from a metrics or analysis standpoint, certainly at the end of the year, we can produce a report that tells you how many decks were requested, how many in-ground swimming pools, things like that. If you start measuring them, you can certainly probably predict the next pandemic if there's all these swimming pools again. So, just from that
The
standpoint.
generators, the number of people putting generators in, I thought was pretty incredible.
Yeah, just
Sure.
And just, I keep a graph of all of it, of course, but,
I'm surprised. Shocking, isn't it? Be nice, Scott.
but just, because there's it's so obvious the top three things that always are the highest and that if there was a way to make that permitting process on those top three more streamlined, it would save a majority of the time. Anyway, that wasn't what I was, I think I've said that
And
before.
if I could just respond real quick, if you're thinking at least two of the three, in my mind, are decks and interior finishes of basements.
Mhm.
Mr. Vogel, our planning technician, generally does those while they wait. Because they are just. They're very straightforward. And even in St. Louis County, they'll do a permit review on decks while you wait there as well. They have an individual that just does those. So there is a recognition that some things don't need to go through the proverbial, layers. To pass no.
Taking a long time for my tech, but anyway, can you give us an overview of the meeting with Fisher Homes concerning the reserve?
Yes, I was just gonna ask that. Thank you.
Let's see, obviously Fisher Homes is still the developer of record. And from their vice president, Bill Allen, they are looking for a partner or an entity or entities to be part of the project. It appears from all indicators that Payne will not do a Main Street crossing where it's a single development entity with X amount of lots, in this case, 132. There is a gentleman that is developing some small projects in town center, Kyle Brown, and he's been asked by Fisher Homes to market the property. And so at this stage, Fisher Homes may be a part of that project or may market the project completely to another entity and not to be a part of the development.
I mean, sell it as a project? The land and the plans?
That's my understanding.
And with the status of the plans are that it's really not approved, right?
That's correct. They have the zoning in place, which was relatively just this year. They have 12 months to submit the site development plan and get favorable action from the planning and zoning commission. So they're on a clock. And they're aware of that clock because we keep them in the loop, because obviously that particular parcel of ground is even more visible than Brightleaf.
Yeah.
And when Brightleaf started development, everybody knows what happened then. So it's real critical that we keep an eye on what's going on in terms of Fisher Homes and their negotiations and ultimate decision, because we want to make sure that whatever developer does come, they understand the rules and regulations for that ordinance.
And hopefully they do a better job with the stormwater control and the other things. Sure, okay, all right, great.
We make it too difficult for anyone to get anything approved. We do. We may not city, us, the council as a whole. And that's why they're not moving forward, in my opinion.
And it's, I'll just a bit of background. Yeah, it's the mid 1980s, the Slavic Trust owns the property. They go to St. Louis County, they get a mall approved there.
Yeah.
500,000 square feet, 9 outlots and 200 plus apartments to boot. That was the golden ring. If we take it in that, and then county did a highway systems plan around the interchange of Route 100, Route 109, that would have mirrored the Chesterfield
Parkway.
Parkway. And so that's why we have Pond Grover Loop Road, or had it for a while. Thereafter, Barra took it under contract right before the incorporation and did a subcontract with Deerbergs. Deerbergs didn't get it done in time and so had to come back and go through our charrette with Andres Dewani in the town center, and they chose to move down the road to where they are today. And then we had Target. And Target got a favorable zoning from the city. And they actually did used a good architect to create an engaging set of
Nice.
buildings. But they waited till the last minute when everything was done to say we need money. We want a SID, we want a TID, we want this, we want that, and it's like. We would have done things differently if we had done that. The impression I got from city council, like we did with Coleman. We asked for things that you don't normally get, and that's what I think they would want to do. And then, you know, it kind of, I've talked to McBride Homes, I've talked to Benton Homes, I've talked to Fisher Fricto, you know, everybody's looked at the site, and Payne Family Homes was the first one to pursue it. And I think there's a reason. It's a difficult site. And so,
There's a lot of areas where there's value in us having 16 people, but this type of thing is a disaster that we have 16 people. In my opinion, that's my impression as someone on the council. We make it very tough for people to move forward.
yeah. And, you know, I'm not gonna, all I'm telling you is there's been probably 3 legitimate proposals on the property. That somehow, for whatever reason, starting with the mall, going to Deerbergs, then Target, just, I don't know.
But at this point, we're just waiting on whatever they're doing, so we're gonna stay on top of it and
So
just keep track of what,
Yeah, the clock's ticking.
either
on
they're
that.
gonna develop it with what's been approved and follow that process, or they're gonna have to sell it. And whoever buys it will have to abide by the same set of standards. So I guess from our standpoint, it's just wait and see
Fortunately.
what happens, right? Okay. Any other questions related to? Okay. That takes us into park matters, which brings us to the first option, which is the first item. on the agenda option. Farmers Market Manager for the 2024 season. Topic, Ms. Rosenthal.
Thank you. Yes, the city has hosted the farmers market since 2009 on Saturdays from late May till October. And Miss Natalie McAvoy has been managing the market since 2018 and has not only made that market more successful, but managed to do so through a pandemic. And she even started up our holiday market, which you might have made it to a couple of weeks ago, which has been so successful, it's become an annual tradition in Wildwood. So that being said, to ensure another successful year, the department is proposing the retention of Ms. McAvoy for our farmers market manager. And essentially it would be for the same amount of compensation, which would remain at $18,000, the same as 2024 and 2020, or the same for 2024 as it was in 2023 and 2022. The total budget for 2024 includes $20,000, which includes $1,000 for incidental costs as well as $1,000 for city's operating costs included in that. The vendors' fees will continue to be at the farmers market manager's discretion, and membership of the manager is required in the Missouri Farmers Market Association and Agri Missouri. And so essentially what the department is looking for is support of those retaining Ms. McAvoy with those components in the contract. And we reached out to Ms. McAvoy to see if she would be interested, and she was just as enthusiastic about it as it was every year. And so with the support of the committee, it will go on to council for.
Do we have a motion? Councilmember Flash.
I'll make the motion that we do just that.
Second,
Councilmember Dodwell. Any discussion on the motion? Councilmember.
Do we have any
Boozle?
idea what the fees amount to? I know used to, we were involved in that. Do we have any idea?
No, it's at the discretion of Ms. McAvoy.
Is there any type of regulation through the Farmers Market Association about how they report that?
Do not know, we can certainly ask.
I'm just curious. I know we, at one point, we were trying to do that. We got out of it, kind of leave it to them. And I just wonder, more curious, how that's going now that we're out of it.
Well, if you, pardon me, I'm sorry.
No, I just raising
If
my.
you use if you use the number of vendors on any given Saturday, it's going fabulously. Because as you know, when we had certain market managers and the city had a more prevalent role, at least in terms of trying to urge them to do more, the numbers were not as good. Right. And so from that perspective, my assessment is she charges a low fee. I think it's $25 per Saturday. And if you do X number of Saturdays, there's a reduction to that. So there's a commitment for more than just one Saturday a month or something. Which I think is a low fee.
I think she does a great job. I'm just curious, just knowing how over the years we've tried different ways to do it. I think she should do it forever. I mean, she has it figured out and seems to be she's there too. So I mean, that's the other thing is very impressive. So.
Councilman Ramberg, do you have something?
Yes, I did. Yeah, you guys like her. That's good enough for me. In past years, we had an actual farmer's market with truck farmers that came and brought vegetables and so on and so forth. You have your selection of 6 different vendors for tomatoes. And the month of August, I'm used to living on nothing but tomatoes because my father grew the best in the world. I cannot get them at our farmer's market now. There's 1 and maybe 2 vendors. Is that just a general social condition where people aren't running any small family truck farms like they used to? Or is there something that can be done maybe to get us pull us a little bit further back toward actual farmer's market?
I would be happy to have that conversation with Ms. McAvoy and just see if it's
That's all I'm
lack of, applicants that want to, because I do know that there have been times that there have been more people that have, applied for the farmer's market than we've been able to allow, with space.
I
So-
don't need any jewelry.
Yeah,
The
no,
only
I'd be
thing
happy
I
to look
go
into
is-
that. I think it's
go
an
for-
excellent question.
Vegetables and fruit and flowers and those kinds of things.
Yeah,
I
so
concur. Yeah.
evidently there's some agreement.
Sure.
My other comment was gonna be just to the group here. I took the golf cart tour with Tom Lee and some other council members and so forth. The worst area of town center in terms of the vegetation, and it just looked horrendous, was the area actually where visitors to Wildwood potentially park when they're going to the farmer's market. The little islands are nothing but weeds, trees are dead, and it's a mess. And so I don't think it would be too costly for us to focus on that area and clean it up a little bit. Even if we just plant grass in the islands, it would be better than it currently is, because that's it's our front door to a lot of people that might want to come to the farmer's market. And I think we can do a whole lot better job with that at a nominal cost. So that's just a suggestion.
Excellent suggestion.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor with the second. Oh, Councilor Ottenberg.
Just a quick question, and I may have missed it, but you mentioned that Ms. McAvoy, who I'm all in favor of retaining, it's at her discretion what fees she charges the vendors. Are the fees that are collected, is that covering the cost of the city supporting this event?
Not to my knowledge, that's,
Okay,
it's good. Okay,
All right.
yeah.
that's fine. I'm just curious.
I would suggest providing fee relief if it's necessary to attract more truck farmers.
Well,
That
I'll-
sort of thing. So yeah, just you handle it.
We're happy to look into the details of that. As long as we're okay with moving forward as keeping her the manager, then I'd be happy to have a further discussion with her on details such as, how people get chosen for the market and, fees associated, if that's something.
Councilman Clark?
I think I asked this last year too, about, maybe we could talk to her about if we can open it up to musicians that are busking. Because I've seen some farmers markets with, a guitar player sitting over here with his bucket open, so people can make donations and it gives like this little atmosphere with some music going, without it being real formal, and you don't have to have a band hooked up or anything, just somebody with their guitar.
She's done that in the past,
Yeah, there
I haven't seen that.
up in that middle area.
Yeah.
I know for a few years she did.
Not every Sun.
Because I
not
bet
every
if we
Saturday.
had advertised that, we would get people coming to do that.
Well, that's something we can talk to her about.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So-
Great suggestions.
We'll go to the motion on the floor, which is to retain Ms. McAvoy, and then we have the department address any of these other parts of what. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, well. I guess if anybody has any other suggestions regarding ideas, please send them to the department and they can take it up there. Next on the agenda for parks is Portner Park.
And you
hard
forgot the
court.
hard court play
Oh.
area.
You're absolutely right, I did. Hardcourt play area in town center.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee. As you know, this particular group spent a great deal of time in 2022 and part of 2023 completing the design, engineering, and bidding for 4 hardcourt surfaces, primarily for pickleball in Community Park. As we are nearing the end of that process, the city council requested a consideration of relocating those 4 courts as part of the project that is being proposed by Greenberg Development, which is at the intersection of Taylor Road and Main Street. Over the course of several months, the department has been working with the engineering firm that's engaged by Greenberg Development. And for the most part, what you see tonight is the view to the whole area here in town center. As you know, it's immediately south of what used to be Llewellyn's restaurant. And it's at the southernmost access point into the Deerberg's Town Center development. For the most part, the direction that was given to Stock and Associates is that was to take our plan for the 4 courts and transfer it over to this site. And that was accomplished. And so what we have is at least 3 pickleball courts, 1 tennis court that will accommodate basketball children and adults want to play. The 4 courts are served by 18 parking spaces, which is more than what was identified in Community Park. And in conjunction with those 18 spaces that are off-street, we do have the on-street parking in close proximity on Taylor Road, which is a nice addition. I also, in talking with Tom Lee, our city administrator, former economic development manager, I think bringing the courts into this particular location will allow the businesses in the vicinity to benefit from it as well. So tonight, the department is presenting the revised version of the plan and seeking any comments or questions from the committee members or any thoughts that might make it better.
When can we get started?
Right.
My goal would be is to get a favorable thumbs up from you to all tonight, have that report to council at the December meeting, and then kind of turn the wheels of the process loose in January, and then go back out to bid, and then have those bids completed as we move into the early spring construction season. And as I was told at Community Park, it's not a complicated project, so I actually think we could have something available in summer.
Like the motion? So Flasher,
I'll second that. I have a question, but go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment too, but I'll make the motion.
let's do the motion.
Yep,
Do
motion.
the motion in a second, then we'll have discussion.
Boom, go for it.
Motion,
Second.
second, all right, discussion, go ahead.
Yeah.
Flasher and then Councilmember Martin.
You just said that it's 3 pickleball courts, and I saw that in the report too, but it just caught my ear this time. 3 pickleball courts and then a full basketball or a full tennis court with basketball. The 3 pickleball courts, is that like 4 per tennis court slot essentially? So 12 pickleball?
Yeah, it's, from what I understand, the way Patel had laid it out, each of a tennis court equals 4 pickleball.
Mhm.
And so we'll have 12 courts. available for pickleball, one tennis court and two half-court.
I guess I missed that in the,
I didn't
thing.
identify.
to me, it almost seems like it would make more sense to have the 8 pickleball courts. And then 2 tennis courts, and one of the tennis courts has the basketball option.
Yeah, that would make.
That makes more sense,
Yeah,
but I-
yeah, because pickleball, it may
It is-
continue to boom.
Right.
We don't know, and there
Right.
are tennis people that need to be served as well, and then
You
the
still have
hoops is-
8 courts of pickleball for people to play pickleball.
I would even suggest that at least that both tennis courts might be able to accommodate basketball, because we could have little, those little 2-on-2 tournaments that they have in larger cities and so on and so forth. It could be really fun, and it could be a center of.
Still a lot of kids, in the teens that like to pick up basketball.
And this will attract them to town center. I mean,
Yeah.
some people will like this, some people
Yeah.
won't, but nevertheless,
Well, I
they might
like,
go over and get ice cream afterwards.
Better than loitering at the.
Ice cream or
Walgreens.
stop it.
I like the noise there a lot better than I like it in community park.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
It's the right.
So is there a desire to change the configuration?
I mean, it'd be the same configuration, but essentially that one,
It's the same hard court, right?
right,
The
it's
way
just
lined.
still 4 hard courts.
You
But
want
one of them's lined for
motion?
10, 2 of them are lined for tennis, whereas 2 of them are lined for pickleball.
Joe, do you wanna, I'm sorry, I'm out of order. but Do you want an official motion on the recommendations for the changes?
Please.
Okay, all right, so do you
I'll
want
make that
to?
motion.
So do we
What is your
do we do
motion?
that as an amendment to the original motion?
Okay,
Can't we just rescind the one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just rescind
Just
the,
rescind it.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
just
So
withdraw
Yeah.
your motion and make.
yeah,
rescind it, and then Councilmember Dodwell, are you okay with that? Cause you seconded it.
That's fine, we can.
Okay, so the
rescind it.
motion's been rescinded, and now we'd like to make a new motion.
I'm making a new motion that we go with the whole plan, which looks fantastic, by the way, but make it 2 tennis courts, 2 pickleball sections. And then if we, I don't know if
For a
basketball's that
total of
cost, but
8.
you still have 4 hard courts essentially, but 8 pickleball over here, tennis/basketball.
Sound good?
And
I'll
Councilmember Dodwell, you
second.
second that? Okay, so discussion, Councilmember Clark?
And did you have something?
I think my question would be is, I know initially you said no lighting. But would it not be smart to put conduit in underneath it? So that when you do come back and say want lighting, it's all ready to go.
Big advocate of that. That's an excellent suggestion.
That doesn't need to be the motion. You can take care of that, right?
Yeah. Just. okay.
So we're good. Councilmember Clark?
Just wanna say, I really like the point that you have about putting in some kind of an art feature. And I was thinking about that, at, Belle Reve Elementary School over off of Mason Road. They did a wall and, they called it Tiles for Smiles or Tiles of Smiles or something. And the tiles, people love these and they would bring their kids to all the events and there was a table where the kids could sit there and paint the tile. Maybe have it all where they're all leaves or something, so it fits in so they would paint it themselves. And then somebody volunteered to take it to their kiln and bake them. And then they make this wall and people go to this school still. I mean, when Marcus comes in town, he wants to go see his tile on there that he did, 12 years ago, or 15 years ago. But people love that and they sold them for like $15 a piece. And so if we did that at all the events where we had something where they could paint the tile, just an idea.
Councilmember Rottenberg?
Question, at the courts, will there be any benches anywhere where people can sit and watch what's going on?
Yeah, I saw the benches on the.
Yeah, I believe there's 2 benches that are shown adjacent to the park, adjoining the parking lot area.
Okay,
And I don't know if that's enough or not. I got this from Stockton Associates, obviously late last week, so I'm gonna send this to Ken Keitel, who did the design for the community park facility, and just ask him a couple of questions. One about the chain link fence, which I identified in the memorandum, and also now the benches.
okay,
We'll see if you've got enough.
sure.
All right, well, we've got the motion for the updated feedback on that, so we got the second as well. Any Any other further discussion on the motion?
I just want
Councilman
to,
Rambo?
does everyone agree that this is this is as the best plan we've come up with so far?
Yeah.
That's why I think.
And it
this is
sounds like
just-
there's the potential for cost savings. Not a guarantee,
Yeah,
but there's a
it's-
potential.
It's just.
Oh, I like
Which is a
that.
bonus.
I think it's a good area for the, like you brought up earlier. the noise.
It's so much easier with the police. I mean, if you didn't have it, you put it in a park, the police would have to be down there constantly because
Yeah.
everybody would want to know what's going on. I just think it's so much.
Just more, it's more promotion in town
makes-
center, which is good. too.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Town center's happy.
businesses,
Yeah.
businesses could use it.
I agree. All
Good
right,
thing we
well,
didn't move too fast.
Yeah, I know. Good
all
slow
in
government.
favor of. the
We're always
motion-
slow, yeah.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? All right, very good. Excited to see this move forward. Next up is the Portner Park.
So again,
Director
thank you,
Rich.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee. As you know, we've been talking about this particular park facility for some time now, and as early as, or as late as last night, the city council authorized the demolition of the existing single-family dwelling on the property. The department has set aside, in part of the fiscal year 2024 budget, $10,000 to begin the planning and design work for this particular park facility. And tonight, the department is, for the most part, giving you a set of steps that it would like to implement to proceed forward with the park planning process. Amongst those, obviously, is the establishment of a group of volunteers, those with particular interest in the park relative to either past ownership or knowledge, proximity to the park and potential impacts on their properties collectively or individually. And then obviously some at-large members so that the rest of the city council can participate in the selection and ultimately have a voice, so to speak, in the decisions that are made. For the most part, there's nothing really earth-shattering about the collective 9 steps. They're pretty much the general planning process. We've used it before on many of our park processes and have had success in gaining good insights, buy-in, and then support as the project moves forward. So tonight, the department is presenting these steps to you and the request to proceed forward with the planning and design components for the park property in 2024. Are there any questions? Certainly.
So you're looking for us to endorse this 9-step plan?
Yes.
The Formation of the volunteer group to
I think,
direct it.
yes, and I think of all of the steps, that's the one I wanted to identify and highlight. Because again, it's another set of meetings, but obviously it's a 27-acre park. It has certain restrictions to it, so I don't believe it's going to be as, let's say, laborious as Community Park was, which we spent a great deal of time on, rightly so. But I'm just saying that that's probably the most kind of, let's say, important component that I want you all to basically think about and endorse if you're set, if you feel comfortable, and if not, how best we might gain that public input, because I think that's critical, obviously.
Well, there are a couple of homes that are quite close, big, big lots. That are as close as Deer Hollow and Henkin Valley. That probably should get the first opportunity to refuse to serve on this because it's gonna be right across from them. So that's the only suggestion I can think.
Does anybody
I'm sorry.
else have any
Jim.
questions anybody like to make a motion? Councilmember Marshall?
Move forward with the department's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, a second. Councilmember Dodwell, any discussion? on the motion?
I just want to apologize for jumping.
No, that's all right.
But I do think those comments are important.
Yeah, I think it is important.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't keep you from slowing down.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bring them in there.
Councilmember Dodwell?
I just want to make sure that we have no funds set aside for building a park here yet, correct? So we'll use volunteers to help with the initial goals of what we want for the park, and that's their charge, is to define critical components within the park.
Exactly, and I think
Okay.
that, I think you've kind of created the, let's say, the sphere of influence that'll be over the discussion of this particular park site. And that we don't have funding set aside. And then compounding that, we have a set of restrictions from the CEOs who donated it.
Yeah.
So I think what we need to do is, okay, we've got these working parameters, let's figure out what we can do in here. And maybe fill in gaps where we don't have facilities, like we have a lake here, a pond. Do we want to have fishing? Do we wanna have fishing on the property, as an activity? And so then, once we have the set of that master plan, then I think we'll be able to know, okay, is this a 10 phase, a 1 phase? Or at least for the future, with the strategic plan and the capital improvement 5-year plan, we can at least start making those decisions with information. in front of us.
Yeah, it will give the council
Yeah.
a much better handle on what the ultimate goal was, similar to what we did with City Park, and that we had some property, but we didn't really know what we wanted to do with it yet. What's your timeline for completing this process, Joe? 6 months, a year?
My preference would be 6 to 8 months, not a full year.
Perfect. I think the faster we can move this through, then we can start looking at budget next year on, okay, can we get this into our 5-year plan? Where would that fit in? And how do we pay for, what might be costing us?
Optimistically, if we have a master plan, maybe we could talk at mid-year about something.
Mhm.
But certainly we'd have something available.
Yeah.
For discussion of fiscal year 2025.
All right, seeing no further discussion on the matter. All in favor of the motion to move this forward, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? All right. Very good. That brings us to Bellevue Farms discussion. Director Budic?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, and members of the committee, I do not so much want you to provide a motion tonight on this, but for the most part, I think we need to think about Bellevue Farms and its future with the city of Wildwood. As you know, we have a long-term lease with St. Louis County. That lease goes to like 2039, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously another 15+ years, the city has the opportunity to develop the park. Park is a beautiful setting. It's in the Merrimack Greenway, Merrimack River Greenway, and for all intents and purposes, offers a range of opportunities for our residents as well as residents of other communities in the vicinity. Problem with the park, and it's been identified from day one, is it's not in the city of Wildwood. We share a common boundary, but the property proper is not in the city. We have done a lot of things to try to implement the components of the lease with St. Louis County and open it for public use. But to date, it still is not open for public use. And as time goes on, what we're seeing, despite the best efforts of Friends of Bellevue, just more and more vandalism and property damage. And it's getting to the point where we either need to open the park so there's eyes and ears in the park more so than not, or we need to figure out a different approach. And so in the memorandum, I talk about basically 3 approaches. One is just continue forward as we have done in the past, work with Friends of Bellevue and their, I guess, stellar and yeoman efforts to basically restore much of the area that's been damaged by invasives and just neglect and lack of maintenance. And then us, as best we can, receive the grants we do from the Missouri Department of Conservation to assist in that restoration effort and look for opportunities in the future to basically open the park somewhere between now and 2039. The other is, for the most part, to step back and say we have a plan. It's not a, it's a simple plan in many regards. It's a parking lot and access to a system of natural surface trails, some of which exist already and some which would be done by volunteers. That's what Friends of Bellevue has offered. And then obviously start ramping up and trying to do something with it. Not this year maybe, but in the next year, 2 or 3. And the other is just to say, it's not something that fits into our vision now. And go back to St. Louis County and say, we think we need to terminate the lease and return it to you for your best efforts, because it's just obviously something that isn't working out as well as the other two, which is Rock Hollow and Bluffview, which have been wildly successful. And so from that perspective, that's the third option. And so tonight, I just wanted to kind of put it out on the table. As the Parks Director and Ms. Ripito as the Assistant Director, we would hate to see us not doing something with it. But we also recognize, as we discussed at length last night, internet, deer management, building improvements, watershed erosion, village green. There's a lot of things out there that are demanding your all's attention and money that's collected through the city tax base that obviously have a greater level of importance than Bellevue Farms. So again, it's just the start of a conversation, unless you all you want to make a decision, that's fine too. But as I say, I just think we need to kind of reevaluate, and I think this is an appropriate time. So thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Councilmember Martin?
Comments, I just got to throw my 2 cents in. I think that all of the parks and the maintenance and the parks are not hard to get. Yeah, a lot of great work. It's the ongoing maintenance that just eats us apart. And in this particular case, I really don't trust the county. I think if they're hurting so much for money, they could come back and say, you know what, we're gonna pull that and sell it to some other kind of development. Then all of the hard work, all the energy, we don't own it. So if we're gonna put money from the city, we ought to be putting it in property that we own and not in something that down the road we have to try to negotiate or they take it back, because they change council members, they decide they want to go after the money. They'll be right here wanting to take it back. And I think we're leaving it in better condition than we got it. That's just my 2 cents. I just think that we should be putting our money in where we own the properties versus where we're leasing something like that.
Fair enough. Councilmember Clark?
So is that in Baldwin? Is that Baldwin?
Sherman Incorporated.
Unincorporated.
Sherman.
Cause I was just thinking if maybe some other, little town around would want to take over the lease and develop it into something, but.
Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, the area is called Sherman, and its access is difficult. It's kind of a muddy, crappy road along the railroad tracks. But once you get there, it's a spectacular view, like a really spectacular view. It's not as good as Bluffview, but it's really nice, and it's probably the biggest field that we have available to the public in all of Wildwood. And you can sit at the top and look out to the river bluff and whatnot. They've done a ton of work on that prairie, and it's a unique asset to us. So I would hate to see us try to give it back. But I agree, we can't spend a pile of money on it because we have parks that are nearer and dearer to our hearts that we should be spending our money on. But I'd say, try to work with the Friends of Bellevue on these grants that have been, we've been successful in, through their work mostly and some of ours, getting quite a bit of money to do the prairie restoration. The problem is, and then we can open it up. But the problem is there's a couple of buildings there that are very attractive to vandals. And the times that I've been there, and I've been there several times, within a minute or two of me pulling up to the dang gate, 3 or 4 Friends of Bellevue were there converging on my truck, what's going on. And they watch it like hawks, but they go to bed at night. And so
What
I'm
are
not
the
sure.
buildings?
Old house.
There's an beautiful old stone building. Well, Joe can describe it.
The barn is to die for.
It's great, really. And well, there's a barn and then there's a caretaker's home or something like
Yeah,
that. And then there's several buildings that look vaguely military to me. Some sort of
Vandals.
hostile
The
thing.
Vandals burnt down
Something burned.
The main
the
house.
main house that was a huge mansion that was up on top of the hill originally.
So if we can get volunteer labor, Gork is they're working dogs. The bad thing about that is you got cyclists there, but they're happy to share. And maybe there's something that we can do to open the park without much money, and that's what I would support. Just,
Councilmember Rodberg?
I guess just two questions. One is, can the Wildwood precinct get more involved with patrols down in that area to possibly prevent some of this vandalism?
We have asked Captain Lundell and then prior to him, Captain Tanner, to understand that it's it's a property that's an asset to us. But again, I always fall back on, if they're down there, they're out of the city of Wildwood and they're not providing patrol service to the city of Wildwood residents. So I think they do the best they can because our boundary does coincide. So they go down, I think they turn around, take a quick look, come back up. But like I say, despite the police, and as you know, we have a vandalism problem in our own parks. We don't have restroom facilities at John L. Cave. We had 6 of them blown up there. And each of them are about $3,000, and Public Water Closet finally said, enough is enough. And so we have our own issues, but like I say, I think the police do the best they can. I would highlight that.
And then what, the second question would be, and I probably already know the answer, but what would be involved with us acquiring sole ownership of that entire property?
Well, when it was leased to us, the council person said, now, this isn't a preemptive annexation. We don't want to give the property away. We're leasing it to you. Understood. We've done it in 2 other instances. There was also pushback from Sherman because the residents there saw it as us trying to impose our will down there and eventually taking on Sherman as well. I think we wouldn't have that now. I think we proved our mettle down there.
Agreed.
So that's something we could explore if you'd like us to at least ask that question to the council people, to the council person in St. Louis County and the Department of Parks and Recreation.
I guess the way I'm looking at this is, so to Councilmember Marshall's point, it seems to be a bit of a money pit if we don't have ownership over it. When you don't own something, it's hard to determine its destiny. And Councilmember Rambo's point, it would be, I hate to see us give it up. And it would seem like the only way we could justify continuing to put money into this property and retain it and develop the way we would want would be to have sole ownership of it. So I don't know how realistic an expectation that might be, but yeah, I would like to suggest that we explore that. Does that make sense to the other?
So that's a great thought, maybe a longer term lease. If we'd be comfortable with 50 years, then we've got some, we've got some time to develop it. You guys have discretion and
It doesn't hurt to ask a question.
Yeah.
How
But
comfortable would the residents of Sherman be with Wildwood taking on that ownership?
Wouldn't that probably involve maybe public hearing?
Well, certainly, I would think just that transfer into itself would deserve some kind of public outreach.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
Except I would think they
They're
would
very
benefit
near and
from,
dear to that property. I mean,
yeah,
I've talked with residents down there when we first got started in all of this. And
The county.
this is part of their home.
I think the important thing would be to explain to them that the reason we're doing this is to develop it the way, in a way that's pleasing to both of them and us, but then also to be able to provide more justification for maybe the law enforcement efforts needed to cut down on the vandalism and so on, making them hopefully feel safer in there. That
A
makes sense.
win-win.
Yeah.
Councilmember Rambo?
yeah, I think they like us because we've shown support and, material support. What I was gonna ask is there does it dead end? Because I had to come down along the east side where you're looking in and then
Dead
you
ends.
turn. There's no way directly from Wildwood to get to the gate, is there? So they have to drive through and the unincorporated part to get there. So it's out of their way. So it makes the patrol even more difficult. Would there be a way? Is there some dead end of which I'm unaware along the railroad tracks there? There's no way to do it,
We have to build a new entrance on the north side of it.
something like that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Private property.
And we'd have to get through private property to get there.
But they have a plan to develop the entrance there at the south where you currently drive through the gate, right? So we'd have to rethink the plans for that. It's pretty steep too, and I think it's bordered by private homes, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it'd be hard to make an access
Yeah.
point.
And it would be very expensive to do any different access from what I know about the property.
Yeah,
Very, very, I mean, you're talking millions probably with some of the homeowners on either side of it.
So Joe, you wanna ask the county what
Yeah.
their
If there's no
appetite
objection.
is for a potential long-term lease or looking at, just to get information as to what. That way we could have a better idea to look and have a conversation about what might make sense if we have some of those facts on the table.
Yeah, certainly. If there's no objection on the committee members' part, Melanie and I will contact St. Louis County, explain the circumstances and ask, would you consider transferring the property to Wildwood? And if not, would you consider a longer term lease? So we know our investment is going to be our investment for the long foreseeable future.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
can
similar-
plan better if we
similar
know
to
what we're working
Bluffview.
with. Councilmember Clark?
Can we look at a copy of the master plan that you spoke of in the?
Oh, sure. I'll send it out tomorrow.
I said similar to Bluffview and the county owns Bluffview, don't they?
Yes.
But we're footing the bill for quite a lot out there.
but how
Good
long
news
do we
that
have
We have
control of that?
25 plus an automatic 25, as I recall. So it was a 50-year time frame.
And so if we know we've got that kind of time, then it makes more
Well,
sense.
it's right on the main drags for us too.
Right.
That is really out of its way.
Yeah, it's Wildwood land, it's landlocked by Wildwood,
Yeah.
so they're not.
I think that's a whole different situation because they're not gonna come in and build on that.
Yeah.
Where I really do think the county's looking for anything they can find to develop to try to get some money.
I think if we can get some of this information, then we can have a realistic conversation about what makes sense. If we know we got a 50-year opportunity or they're gonna give it to us, that changes the dynamic of what we're talking about regarding how that works. So if you can get that information and then bring it back and then we can talk further.
Do my best. No.
Thank you, thank you. So that goes into the last two items under park matters, which are just the informational pieces. Does anybody have any questions or comments related to that? No, okay. That takes us to the end of our regular agenda and we have an executive session
Yes.
on the agenda here. So do we need to do a roll call go into executive session?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So you'll ask for a motion to go into closed
Yeah.
session under pursuant to RSMO 610.0212. And then we'll do a roll call. And we just need to step into the council chambers just for the fact of Zoom and live stream.
Okay.
And I don't expect it to take more than a few minutes.
I'll make that motion to, I guess, adjourn to go into.
We won't adjourn, we'll just go
Go
into
to closed session.
We're
go
going
into
to
closed session.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
second. Okay, and actually, now that Katie's here, we've got four.
Yeah, we can do.
You got a motion on the floor to go into closed session.
Roll call vote, yeah.
No, I'm gonna
Yes.
wait for Rob to get back for him to go in.
I'm sorry, who made that motion?
Councilman Rottenberg,
Yes.
Perfect.
seconded by
Yeah.
Councilmember Flacker.
Sorry, my bladder was
you.
not gonna-
You are.
Pardon?
Killing that flower mound. That's the name of it. Yeah.
Oh.
Indian. in
Oh,
Oklahoma.
yes, uh-huh.
So 3 hours, I thought I was gonna die. I got in there and I kept wondering. Maybe give us a break.
You know,
It was 3 hours. Minutes.
luckily I went to the restroom because I knew it was a long move.
Interesting, it wasn't.
Oh, it was
We don't
really
have an
interesting.
unauthorized break.
Yeah.
That's right, I don't remember.
They just stopped and sang.
Permission
So
music
many
or
different
something?
twists and then there at the end.
Might have to run and take an unauthorized break.
Well, it'll take us a minute to get the room set up.
You could exercise the spirit of tradition and just declare a 3-minute break or something. like that.
He'll wanna know when we come back where everybody went.
I could, actually, I am gonna Let's take a 2-minute break while we wait for,
Yeah,
I'll
that's a
use the
good
restroom too, and then we'll
Okay.
go take a vote.
There it is.
Oh,
I mean, I'll take the vote, now, and then we can take a break.
yeah, I
and
was
do
gonna
that.
say,
Yeah, yeah, all right.
Rob,
So
there's
we
a
had a-
motion on the floor.
we had a motion on the floor to go
adjourn
into closed
and have a party
session.
At your house.
Come on over. I got a cheesecake.
All right, so we're gonna do a roll call vote. Ms. Ripito?
correct. Chair Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni, Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Perfect, and we can go into closed session.
We'll take a 2-minute break as we have it here over there and then we'll circle back. Cell phone stay in here. Yep.
Yeah. Just being able to stand up.
Yeah, it's good.
Fine. Yeah.
That was in closed session.
Oh,
You should talk about the department like that while they're in here.
Saved on that one.
Thanks, Chair.
All right,
Ellen and I appreciate that, Chair.
yeah. All right, all jokes set aside, thanks, guys. So we've got, not ready for action, those are just notifications. No questions or anything there, which brings us to our next meeting, which is Tuesday, December 19th. Sure, Councilman Clark's gonna bring us some good Christmas treats, I expect. Nudge, nudge.
What are you gentlemen gonna do in return?
You wouldn't wanna eat anything I could.
I didn't see you had to eat anything.
We're gonna eat them.
I'd be happy to stop by Deerberg's and pick something up. All right, but closing remarks, thanks to everybody for a good conversation and good discussion. I think even we have a good vibe in here as far as being able to discuss things and get everyone. So appreciate all the insight and information and sharing and all that. So well worth it. And even though we did go a hair, well, 25 minutes, so like that's okay. I think this is just gonna be, November is gonna be the long month for the meetings. But without that, with anything else, do we have any miscellaneous?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to
Happy
everybody.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thankful to be in a great city with great people and great staff.
Mhm.
Great council and everything. So with that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Flasher, Councilmember Dodwell, second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Thank you all very much.
All right, thanks, guys.